we're in. Okay, really, I thank you everybody for joining for the almost Yahrtzeit of my mother, Florence Fox, Freidle, bat Shmuel Tzvi. The family just did a Zoom gathering of her unveiling, and it was really very beautiful and meaningful. And if I can do this, I will be really happy. One second. First of all, I have to shut off my WhatsApp. And give me half a minute because I am going to, no. Okay, I wanted to do a share screen and I don't know how to get to my desktop from here. So, okay, if it doesn't happen, oh, wait, no, not gonna happen. Okay, don't know how to do it. Oh, well, that's really too bad because I wanted to show pictures of my mother, and I have one behind us actually. Behind us. Okay, I'm not advanced, but we will best. Okay, so here is, let's see if we can get this on here.
Well, into the video, we can see already.
Yeah, can you see?
Oh, okay.
So that is my mother and beloved father. They were married passionately, lovingly, happily for 62 years. I want to first, besides thanking everybody for being here, I want to really thank my husband Avi, who said cottage for my mother all year round, which was no easy task because they were not in it was a coronavirus, and he went above and beyond the duty to make sure that cottage was for her, and I appreciate that very much. And I also want to thank Jeremy Stamen, who I don't know if he's on or not, but when Avi had an operation on his shoulder, Jeremy stepped in for about a week, and he said cottage for my mother. So she had a full cottage, and it was very special. Thank you so much. So some of you don't even know that I was mourning my mother this whole year, and that's because she literally died 2 hours before Rosh Hashanah. She was unwell for a couple of years, and Avi and I had spent a month with her in August, and then she passed. My sister called me the morning before Rosh Hashanah, and she said, "Mommy took a turn, and she's probably not going to make it." And my daughters and Avi and I Skyped in with her very dedicated caretaker, Roma, and we said Shema with her, and we told her how much we loved her, and 2 hours before Rosh Hashanah, she was gone. And because I had a little bit of a warning, so I had finished my cooking, and I finished my showering, and I cleaned up the house and set the table, and everything was ready to go, and then I said Shiva. And Avi ran around to the neighbors, and to their credit, they all started coming over very quickly in their dirty t-shirts because everybody was busy with Rosh Hashanah preparations. And I sat 2 hours, and then I lit Rosh Hashanah candles, and I went off to shul, and everybody's wishing a new year, a sweet, happy new year. And I was like, thank you. My mother just died. Like, it was a very surreal thing. And I believe Rosh Hashanah, what I've learned is Rosh Hashanah is actually a very happy holiday where you crown God King. And I didn't want to be sad. I didn't want to be mourning. I flew out right after Rosh Hashanah to New York, caught the funeral on Thursday in New York, sat Shiva with my sisters, Janice and Rena, Thursday, Friday. Shabbat, I went to West Hempstead and spent a wonderful Shabbat with my very wonderful stepdaughter, Chaya Batya. Went to my parents' house by myself for 2 days, started to unpack, organize, throw out, clean, whatever little, very little I could do of 62 years of life. Then Yom Kippur came. So my dear friend Hindusera in Far Rockaway found a seat for me in shul. I went off to Hindusera. I had Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur finishes. Hindusera heats up a cup of soup for me. Literally with this hot cup of soup after Yom Kippur, I ran. I caught the first plane out to Israel, back to Israel, holding my soup. Landed in Israel. It was Shabbat. Then it was Sukkot. And nearly almost a month later, after all the holidays, Avi went off to shul. I was left alone by myself in the house. And it was the first time after a month of my mother being gone, almost a month, that I was able to say, my mother's gone. And we're supposed to be happy on Shabbat. And I said, I can't start crying on Shabbat. I can't do that. And I went out for a walk and I saw my friend Evie and we spoke to her. And then it was Corona. And things started really becoming public in March with Corona, but I actually knew in January that Corona was gonna happen. And so I didn't want to have any gatherings or anything like that for my mother. And then now it's right before Rosh Hashanah. And I said, you know, now is the time to really honor this very, very wonderful and special woman. So my mother loved life, loved her life, counted her blessings every single day, and was a very positive and also very tough woman. And I believe that, and I saw with my own eyes actually, that she was laying there at the end when we were there for the month, and she would look at the ceiling and you could see actually that she was seeing the angels around her, and God was calling her back, and she would put up her hand and she would say, not yet, God, I'm not ready to go yet. She merited in that short span of time 2 more great grandchildren and the marriage of a granddaughter. And until those things finished, she wasn't ready to go. And she told God, I'm not ready. My mother, on paper, her life wasn't a perfect life per se. She grew up poverty-stricken in Williamsburg, New York. Only has happy memories of her growing up. She lost her mother when she was pregnant with her first child. That's Shiva pregnant with my sister Rena, who's named after her mother. And I'm named after her father, Tzvi, I'm Tsivya. And she lost her beloved brother and sister within a year of each other. And yet she would say she had the best life in the world, that she was surrounded by love. She gave love and she got love back. And that was her message to us. Give love and make the world a better place. She was a very funny woman. Now, my father was a very funny man, and the house was always filled with a lot of laughter. And it really wasn't until my father went 4 years before my mother that I realized just how funny my mother was. She had a way of finding the good in everything. We were raised that if there was bird poop on our car window, that was going to be a lucky day. If it rained on a special occasion, that was going to be lucky. So we would all hope it would rain on our weddings, it would rain on our graduations, whatever was going to be happening, it should rain because that was going to bring good fortune. We grew up with a lovely woman, Judy. Judy was a single mother, and Judy told me at my father's funeral that my parents welcomed in this very attractive single mother to our home for all our holidays, but we would go to her for Christmas. And she would, every year, she would gift us with soap. Now, I'm sure she didn't have much money. She was a single mother. And on the way there, we were young kids. Soap wasn't exactly the highlight of our life, but we would practice in the car. Thank you for this soap. I love this soap. Isn't the soap wonderful? And we would make joy out of this wonderful gift that this person would give. As the years went by, Judy would give gifts to my kids. My mother would give gifts to her kids. And then eventually they decided that they would give donations to charity rather than giving gifts. And my mother told me once, she said, I love the idea of giving charity. My mother always gave charity, but I'm not so happy with the charities Judy chooses. So, well, what kind of charities does she choose? So she said, things like Save the Irish Ukulele. And we just thought that was very funny. And the whole day we were laughing, Save the Irish Ukulele, that's such a funny charity to give to. And at the end of this whole day where we were laughing, my mother said, actually, I just made that up. But she did come out with unusual types of charities to donate to. My mother was raised in a religious home, but she herself wasn't religious, but she had all the makings of what we appreciate in life. And she lived her life going from mitzvah to mitzvah to mitzvah. She always welcomed guests in the home. And at the entrance to our home, there was a cornucopia filled with candies. And anyone who walked in took a candy because they should enter with a sweet taste in their mouth and they should leave with a sweet taste in their mouth. She became friends with my parents, became friends with their financial advisor, the plumber, the electrician, the cleaner, whoever walked through those doors became my parents' friends, including when Hurricane Sandy hit. My father, who had Alzheimer's, and my mother took care of until kept him home long after anyone else would have put him into a facility. So they were home together for Hurricane Sandy. My father already had advanced Alzheimer's. My mother was a very thin woman. When I would go and I would help, I would get exhausted helping. And how she did it day in and day out, it was pure determination and love. And Hurricane Sandy hits and there's no electricity. And their phone was always ringing off the hook with friends, and they had many, many invites for people to come and join their homes that had electricity. And my mother didn't want to leave the house because she thought it would be disorienting for my father. And it was cold, and my father used to watch TV all day because that's what he was capable of doing at that point, and there was no electricity. So the entire family started calling the police and the fire department and saying, there's this elderly couple in this freezing home in Hurricane Sandy. We can't reach them. You have to go and you have to check on this elderly couple. After endless phone calls from the family, finally the police came to check on them. And of course, my mother welcomed them into the house. And my parents were sitting at the dining room table with a tablecloth and candlelight and glasses of wine and hot chili that my mother had pulled out of the freezer. She always had a well-stocked freezer of good food. And they were in the middle of a romantic meal. So the police said, you're doing better than anyone during this hurricane. And of course, my mother said, yes, we are. We're fine. Please join us. The chili is delicious. And they became friends with my parents. That's how the house was run. That's how the house went. She was a career counselor. She was a teacher first, and she was a teacher till the end of days, and she was a student of life. She was always interested in growing and learning. And she was interested in what other people were interested in. So when my father started becoming unwell, she decided baseball would be a good thing for them to learn about because it was numbers, it was fun to watch, it would be something that would keep my father's brain working, and her brain was always working. So she learned baseball, and then she would speak to all the children and the grandchildren about baseball. She was a big Yankee fan, and she would always say, "My boys, my Yankee boys." So but she also, as a career counselor, she also had to be tough with people because she counseled hardcore unemployed. These were ex-alcoholics, ex-drug addicts, all kinds of people. And they would walk in with piercings all over their face and purple mohawks and tattoos. And she would look at them. She would have 2 weeks to straighten them out in order to get a job. And she would look at them and she would say, "First, get the earrings out of the face. Change the purple mohawk. No one's hiring you with a mohawk. Put on a long sleeve shirt, cover the tattoos." And they would love her for it because they knew that it was coming from a place of love and care. And she would say everyone who walked through her door would get a job after 2 weeks of training them and making a mensch out of these people. They would be in touch with her, they would call her, they would write her thank you notes. She was in the hospital the last few years a couple of times for various reasons. And my mother always was a good cook and would never eat food that didn't taste good. And hospital food, you should know from it, isn't full of flavor. So the first hospital she was in, she complained so much about the food that they actually gave her shopping coupons to go and get regular food from the kiosk or whatever in the hospital. But the second place she was in a rehab that had something like 1,500 people in it. And the food was terrible. And she wouldn't eat if food didn't taste good. And she complained, but everyone loved her. And finally, she said, "I want to talk to the chef of this rehab." And the chef came up to visit her and sat down and said, "What can I do for you?" And my mother said, "People are sick in this hospital. And the food you're serving has to say, 'I love you, and I care about you, and I want you to feel better.' And your food doesn't say that." So he said, "How can I make it better?" And she gave him certain suggestions, and he thanked her, and he sent her up special food, and he would call and he would say, "Is the food better?" And I don't know if you would get away with it. I don't know if I would get away with it, but she would get away with it because she had tremendous chen. And chen is this inner beauty. She was not only outer beauty, she was inner beauty. This is my internet. Okay. And people saw this. She spoke English, Yiddish, and Spanish, and would say she could understand French and Italian. And when she would go to the farmer's market, she befriended all the Spanish guys who worked at the food stands because she spoke Spanish. And she was sort of like Esther in the Purim story, where everybody said, "She's from my people." Everybody wanted to be related to my mother. They thought she was Spanish, they thought she was French, they thought she was some Jewish. She was exotic in her own way, and everybody wanted to be part of her family. And we were grateful to be part of her family. Her calendar was always filled with birthdays and anniversaries and events and company coming. She would say, celebrate your simchas. She would have a happy birthday sign hanging at the entrance to the house that never came down because there was always a reason to celebrate. And when we would gather, she would get a very big cake. And anyone who had a birthday, a graduation, an anniversary the month before, that month, if we weren't going to see each other the month after, the names went on the cake. Everybody was part of the party. Every simcha was celebrated. She would participate in penny saver contests. Write a little jingle, write a little poem, and inevitably she would always win because she was a great writer and she loved words. So she won turkeys and her picture was in penny saver, and she won boxes of Yankee baseball paraphernalia because she wrote a little ditty about the Yankees, and she won tickets to the circus and tickets to the zoo. And we said, Mommy, it's one thing that you win. How do you even know about these contests? But she would participate in all of them, and she would always win. In fact, when I lived in Far Rockaway, I wanted to get a new kitchen, and I didn't have the money for a new kitchen. So there was a contest from Hellmann's Mayonnaise that you had to come up with a recipe to using Hellmann's Mayonnaise. So I went through all my recipes, and I said mayonnaise is made up of eggs and oil, and I found recipes that called for eggs and oils, and I took that out and I replaced it with mayonnaise, and I ended up making a sweet potato pie recipe using Hellmann's mayonnaise, which actually was delicious, is delicious. I still make it. And I called my mother and I said, Mommy, I am joining this contest in order to win a new kitchen. And she said, read me the recipe. So I read her the recipe and she said, I'm sorry, you lost. So I said, how do you know I lost? I just went in. How do you know I lost? So she said, you didn't put nutmeg. And only the recipes that have nutmeg win. And she was right. I didn't win. So I want to share with you something that's a little funky, but true. And I'm sharing it because a friend of mine, Chava Dumas, she had the same experience with her father who died just after Yom Kippur last year. And she said the same thing happened with her father. So at the end of my mother's life, the last month when Avi and I were with her, she was in bed at home. She had a wonderful caretaker, Roma, who we thank profusely for her love and care. And she would often stare at the ceiling, and now and again she would call out to her mother, who she wasn't actually very close to, because her mother was very European. My mother would say she's very Yankee Doodle, and my mother was into languages. Her mother only spoke Yiddish or Russian, and she would often call out to her mother, and it was clear that she was seeing her mother, actually, the angel of her mother. So we were there, it was right before Rosh Hashanah, and I went to all the graves of my extended family, my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles, my cousins, my great-grandparents. And I prayed by their graves, and I asked that they should help to have mercy on my mother. And when I got back to my mother, when I got back to my mother, she often would put her hand up very peacefully, and she would be looking at the ceiling. Her eyes would be moving, and then she started calling out. My father, she also often would call out to, but she started calling out to her brother, her sister, her father, all the people who I had prayed by their graves. And it was very clear to me that she was really seeing these angels, and they were setting the stage for her to go into the next world. And there was a certain comfort in knowing that she was going to be back with the people that she loved and who loved her. I think before Rosh Hashanah, it's a valuable thing to remember that this world, even if we merit to live 120 years, life is short, and we're here to make it as great as it can be and make the world a better place. So time is running out. So I just want to leave you with sayings that I grew up with from my mother, which I think are inspirational and which I live by every single moment of my life. She would say,
I just keep playing marinade. Okay, good.
She would say, life is about finding balance and enjoying every moment. And she did. She counted her blessings every second of every day. Work hard, but not too hard. Stop and smell the roses. Life is too serious to take seriously. Laugh. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That was a big sign that was up in our kitchen. Enjoy the cherries. It's a short season. That came from her discussing with a friend that the cherries were very expensive and they were going to wait until the price went down. But the price never went down and cherries were no longer available. So she would say often, take advantage of the moment. It may be fleeting. Enjoy the cherries. It's a short season. Don't sweat the small stuff. Look at the bigger picture of what really matters. Failure isn't an option. Life is like baseball. You never know how the game will go. The key is to never give up and find a way to win. Count your blessings. Don't gather or collect hurts. She would say everybody makes mistakes, and it's for us to be forgiving and forgetful of those hurts. Don't gather the hurts, remember the good. Don't pay the toll twice, meaning don't over worry, don't over stress. It will be what it will be. Do the best you can to make it the best you can. She would say, we expect excellence. You have to work hard. But then she would be forgiving. Play your part in making the world a better place. Things aren't important, people are. Put on the lipstick and put one foot in front of the other. She always had her red lipstick. And in the hospital, when the staff would come, they would all come, looking at their books. Hello, Mrs. Fox, how are you feeling today? And then they would look up. I had a picture of her. I don't know how to share the screen. And she had a full face of makeup on in the hospital with her red lipstick. And she would smile at them and they would say, wow, you look beautiful. And they would get happy to see a woman in the hospital, very unwell, looking put together like she was ready to face the day. Celebrate your simchas and never miss an opportunity to celebrate. You got to hang in till tomorrow, which has been my mantra through my struggles in life. Failure isn't an option. nurture relationships with family and friends, just give love, because everybody is hurting, embrace life, keep learning and growing, and be brave, and love deeply. So my mother did all those things and much more. I tried to gather a few snippets of a very unusual and very smart and very giving woman who never complained and never looked stressed and had multitudes of company all the time and worked full time and cared and remembered everybody's simchas and loved every moment of her life. And I bless all of us, everybody, with a sweet, healthy, happy new year. With the 2 minutes I have left, I'm going to share another story. My mother would go to Boston for Rosh Hashanah to be with my sister Janice and brother-in-law Rick and their children. And every year she would go, and they would go to throw away their sins for Rosh Hashanah. So they would get to a place with water, and she would say, I need an extra piece of bread. And she would take this piece of bread and she would say, help me not be so judgmental. And she would throw the bread in the water. And the last year that she was with my sister and brother-in-law and family, she didn't ask for that extra piece of bread. And they said, Ma, what happened to that extra piece of bread? You're always working on yourself, not to be so judgmental. And she said, I worked very hard on myself, and I don't think I need that extra piece of bread anymore. I love you all for being here. I so appreciate you joining. We should share simchas. We should remember the good that people have shared with us in their lives, with love and with happiness. And really, I love you all. My mother would say 3 kisses, everybody.
Beautiful, Tsivya. May her neshama have an aliyah.
Amen.
Love you.
Thank you so much.
Love
Thank
you.
Very
Beautiful.
nice.
Thank you,
Beautiful,
Tsivya. Very
beautiful.
beautiful. Neshama Seven Aliyah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Love you,
Shana
Sherry.
Leah,
So good to see you.
beautiful.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Avi.
And 3 kisses back. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing these beautiful things about your mother.
Mazel tov.
Rachel, thank you for
Yes,
joining.
neshama.
Everything was beautiful.
Thank you so much. Shana Tova. Should be a
Shana Tova, Tsivya.
Tova.
Beautiful.
I'm sure she's shipping lots of nachas from you.
thank you so much.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Shana Tova.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Okay. Blow kisses, blow kisses. Oh, here, Tsivya, kisses from Lev.
Love you, Lev.